Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this public forum for the new proposed elementary school. My name is TJ Recupero. I serve on the school building committee. Along with me today are several members of the building committee, along with the project team, DRA, the architect, and Vertex, the owner's project manager. We'll be here to answer some questions after we run through a quick presentation. We're not going to take too much of your time, but give you an overview on the project from start to finish and all the important points and decisions that went into it. So for starters, you see up on your screen, this is a timeline on this project from birth to present. It actually started in 2010 with the creation of a town-wide facilities master plan that went through and identified the status and the deficiencies of all town buildings, schools included. And for the schools at the time, there were two schools in particular that were identified in need, the South School and the high school. Moving ahead, going back into the early 2010s, around 2013 and 14, the school committee started to aggressively pursue new school projects through the Mass School Building Authority that has a grant program that will pay a significant portion of project costs for school construction, school renovation. So they submitted statements of interest. That's the first start of that's the beginning of the process for both the high school and the South School. In 2014, I was on the Board of Selectmen. MSBA came out to Stoughton, met with several people, myself included, and discussed the two projects and which one to prioritize because they both had a significant need. They toured both schools, MSBA and representatives toured both schools, and they decided at that time, along with the school committee, it was I think a joint decision that the high school offered more bang to the buck to the community generally. So the focus was on the high school. The South School need continued, and as a matter of fact, it's only deteriorated since in the now 13 years since then. Jump ahead, excuse me, to 2015 or so. The high school was well underway. The school committee started to discuss what to do with the South School again. When the high school was completed in 2020, that's when the school committee started to resubmit statements of interest for the South School, and it was eventually accepted in 2022. The beginning of the process is you enter into a feasibility study agreement with MSBA. They say study these things under these criteria, our criteria, meet these benchmarks, and come back to us with a project. Can't be we're not building any school. We're building a school that complies with MSBA standards for space, for quality, for programming, all to unlock what is for us 42% of the project cost of the entire project cost and about $47 million. What we'll do, we're in the process now where we're approved by town meeting. It's going to go to the voters to pay for a debt exclusion. That's authorization to pay for the borrowing outside of the Proposition 2.5 levy ceiling so that it doesn't get included in our borrowing limits under the town, and it's outside the budget. Same as we did for the high school, same as the town did for the new fire station. And that happens on June 11th. If that passes, construction will begin in 2025 and be completed in time for the school year in 2027. If you can flip to the next slide. So this is the important question, and this is getting a lot of discussion on all sides. I'll be quick about this because we're going to address this at another point in the presentation. But so recently, and inside my door yesterday, I saw a flyer saying that this was a 6.4% increase in taxes. That's not correct. I suspect that person or people who put that in my door know it's not correct. It's not entirely their fault because when we initially estimated the cost per taxpayer for this project, we estimated that it was going to cost the taxpayer around $400 each per year. We did that because at the time, and this goes back to the last fall, we were using current borrowing rates, we were using current property values, we were estimating what a borrowing length would be, and we were estimating high because the worst thing for us would have been to come in low and then say that we were trying to fudge the numbers or something less than it was. So we estimated high, at $400. On April 30th, this is 7 days before town meeting, the town held a seminar or a discussion, public discussion, the select board did with its financial advisor, a firm called Hilltop Securities, that estimated and broke down I don't want to say actual because it's still an estimate, but based on current borrowing rates, conditions, and town borrowing policy, they estimated this project would cost about 61 cents per $1,000 of property value. So how does that work? The average property in Stoughton now, as of fiscal year 2024, is 512,000, a little more or less and change. 61 cents per $1,000 equates to $318 increase per year. That's a 4.79% increase, and not the 6.4% increase that certain people opposed to this project, it appears, have been talking about. So I want to be clear about that. This is 300. It's still a lot of money. Nobody's minimizing it, but I think the scary amount that's being passed around is not correct, and I wanted to correct that right up front. Next slide, and Tim Bonfatti of Vertex will go into where we are right now.
Thanks, TJ. And just quickly on the tax impact, there is now a tax calculator on the website that people can access. Just enter their home value or their assessed value, and they'll get their estimated tax impact. So as TJ mentioned, you know, we have been at this for quite some, or the town of Stoughton has been at this for quite some time. As a project, we started seriously getting into it in December of 2022. Last year was spent essentially deciding on the two major enrollment options, which involved either the South School singularly or the combined school that consolidates. And the school committee chose to go with the consolidated option, which you'll hear more about why we did that. So that was submitted in August of 2023 to the MSBA. The MSBA board approved that. And then we did design and budgeting and went to the board again in April of 2024 with the actual approved project that you're going to see. In the meantime, as you can see from this graphic, we've had a number of community forums. We've had a number of school building committee meetings, 19 school building committee meetings, many school committee meetings to go over the consolidation. And we are going to continue that as we even move forward through until the ballot initiative. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Baeda, I believe.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joe Baeda, superintendent here in Stoughton. Welcome to all of those who are able to take the time during your lunchtime. Really want to take a look at this from the perspective of the educational issues that we are trying to move forward here in Stoughton as an elementary project. And really, this would be our first building in K to 5 or pre-K to 5 that will be a true 21st century learning environment. And as a first and a consolidated school, it's really important for us to look at the academic, the wellness, and the social aspects of teaching and learning that this facility would bring to Stoughton. As you all know, many of our buildings are older. So at a 21st century elementary school, what we're really looking at is taking a look at distinguishing our grades as a K to 5 school with an upper and lower school, really right-sizing classroom spaces for our specialized education programming, which is very important currently. We have to literally take regular sized classrooms, if you will, and break them down in order to be able to provide services. Focus on the centralized learning commons with STEM or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then reinforcing the concept of building as a teacher, if you will. And I think the building itself, both the outside of the building and the inside of the building, truly make it a 21st century building, unlike any of our other elementary schools. Of course, when you're looking at wellness and everything that's going on in society, everything from the acoustic design to the ventilation system, state of the art, to the outdoor spaces for project-based learning that are integrated as part of this project, to really taking a look at the selection of the materials that we're using in the 21st century today compared to our buildings from the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. This takes us to the next level. And of course, socially, a huge component of an elementary education, which is the focus on making sure that we have community spaces that are separate from the school. As you know, the current South School, for example, things like voting day or the use of the public is absolutely interconnected to the rest of the building. This actually secures these spaces as separated from the building and can be utilized as needed. So that brings both that internal and external community flavor that we really want to have in all of our schools. And a perfect example of that right now would be Stoughton High School. And then the collaborative spaces that you see, if you've seen the video especially, this is all about 21st century learning, which is all about project-based and collaboration with students and teachers together and working in small groups all of the time. And then lastly, our professional spaces for our student supports, which right now, at least in some of our schools, is not confidential the way it should be, from the nurse's office, for example, at the South School, to some of our individual needs of students around psychology or OT, PT, speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy. The professional spaces will be available as part of this 21st century school. Next slide. So for many of you, or for some of you, I hope you've taken the opportunity to come see the school yourselves. And if you ever have a need to want to do a walkthrough, I am available and can make staff available to be able to do that. So you can see firsthand what TJ talked about that happened a number of years ago, which is that both the MSBA in 2 different reviews, as well as our own building facilities master plan, really looked at that this building was the priority, because as TJ noted, a high school went first, and then this became second, and long-term consolidating of schools so that we're not building 5 elementary schools over the next 2 decades. But when you look at the deficiencies of the South School, everything from the building envelope and the structure is not energy efficient. It does leak when it rains. The cafeteria size is too small. Any parent that's been there, or any grandparent that's visited the school, you know that parking and event spaces are limited. I just recently spoke about student rights and privacy in terms of the nurse's office or actual direct services just not available. And part of that is that prior to IDEA, or the special education law that came into place in 1972, any building that was built prior to that did not have these types of service provided to students. And this is a perfect example at the South School. The physical needs of students and staff, including accessibility issues, wheelchair, for example, lack of space for 21st century educational needs. There's no dedicated kindergarten areas in the building. Building safety is a concern in general. I won't get into details with that, but it is a concern that we have. And then the building systems themselves are beyond life expectancy. And again, if you at any point would like to do a walkthrough, I'm happy to find time and do that with you. Next slide, please. So our district-wide improvements as part of this consolidated district is that if you look at it, we're looking to construct a project that was identified in 2010 to consolidate. The school committee took that vote this past year and will cause redistricting. Now, redistricting is going to take place regardless of a yes vote or a no vote because of the crunch that we are having with enrollment. Our facilities master plan also made this recommendation as a way to try to reduce overcrowding, dedicated classroom space, improving special needs programming, universal preschool, which is something that's being looked at. So the school committee has looked at one of the recommendations from the facilities subcommittee, which is to have the Jones School actually become a potential alternative education site, plus the housing for administration. That means 6 to 12 instead of 2 students leaving the district for alternative education because of suspension or other needs. And then the Wilkins schools becoming the future of the preschool. And this is huge for us because of the idea that universal preschool, just like universal K came to Stoughton in 2000, the universal preschool as a state level initiative is coming down the pike in the next few years. We've also dedicated and made improvements at the Hanson, the Daw, and the Gibbons. And the reason for those improvements is to continue to make sure that those 3 buildings are in play so that we are not looking for new elementary schools in the future. At worst situation, it would be additions and renovations. and not new school buildings that have a significant cost, as you know. Next slide. And I'll turn it over to Carl.
Thank you, Dr. Baeta. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carl Franceschi with DRA, the architects for the project. And based with all that background, we just want to quickly let you know that the design team, project team did look at a number of alternatives, including alternative sites for this project, before settling on the proposed site that we'll share with you today. And we did look at specific alternatives in terms of addition renovation of the current South School, building new construction on the South School property, as well as several options on the so-called line lumber site off Park Street as well. And the one that was selected was this so-called pinwheel design, a three-story building off of on the line lumber site off of Park Street. It's nearly adjacent to the back side of the South School property. And it's a piece of property, town-owned property, that was acquired back in the 1960s for school purposes. The site plan shows the primary entrance is off of Park Street. One of the real advantages of this new program is the clarity and the accommodation of the circulation system, where there's a generous drop-off loop for parents dropping off students. There's a separate bus loop to keep that traffic separate, and a fire lane that goes around the back of the building that also doubles as a kindergarten drop-off too. So very good and safe site circulation. In addition, the design of the building responds to those goals, both academically, wellness, and socially. The design incorporates the outdoor areas with these wings that define, a kindergarten play area, an older children's play area, a outdoor classroom area, a paved playground directly off of the cafeteria, and a dedicated entrance courtyard. So whether you arrive by bus, by pedestrian, by car, all visitors and students enter in a safely and secure dedicated main entrance. And then just to share quickly the design of the building. Again, you can see these wings of the building that respond to the educational program. The blue wings, each one of these wings is a grade level. So on the first floor, there's kindergarten and first grade. As the building rises, you have second and third, and then fourth and fifth stacking above those wings. The other two wings of the pinwheel are one-story portions of the building. The yellow areas are the community areas with a dedicated entrance directly adjacent to the gym and cafeteria. And then the fourth wing is adjacent to the main entrance, is the administration wing. And in the center of it all is that hub of learning commons, basically the modern version of the library in the center of the building. Again, very responsive to the educational program that was set forth. These more detailed plans are all available on the project website too, linked to the school website. So please, if you want more information or more detail, you can see that there. But this design was chosen for a number of reasons, in addition to the way it responds to the educational program. It sort of maximizes the reimbursement from the state. It minimizes so-called ineligible square footage in that regard. It's a very flexible plan. We're utilizing, what traditionally is corridor space. We're utilizing that as learning space. It's incorporating the outdoor area in a very efficient way. And the building will be not just a green school, but will go over and above and be very energy efficient, to earn not only more reimbursement from the state, but also significant rebates from the utility companies, and will pay off in the long run with lower operating costs for the district. And then just to mention some of the specific sustainable goals, as we said, that are incorporated here. By being this energy efficient and environmentally sensitive, the project will be earning 4% additional reimbursement from the state, a very significant amount of money. And then in addition, as we mentioned, rebates from the utility companies. There will be ground source heat pumps for part of the building. Again, no fossil fuels involved. It's an all electric building, and the goal is to achieve LEED Silver. And I'll pass that on to Tim.
Okay, thanks, Carl. So as we mentioned in the earlier slide, the financial numbers have changed, particularly the anticipated tax increase with the new numbers we received, which I won't go over again. But I do want to talk quickly about the budget. As you can see here, the anticipated funding from the MSBA, which is guaranteed, the funding from the MSBA is guaranteed up to that 47 million on the high school. The total project came in less, so both the MSBA and the town shared in that savings, but it is up to the 47 million that would be participating from the state. That's from your local taxes that pay for that. The cost, that's the total all-in project, the 114 million. That includes the soft costs and the furniture and technology. It does not include the reimbursement that we have does not include the energy efficiency rebates that Carl mentioned, which now are pretty robust. They're in the 7 figures in most cases, but until we actually make those submissions, we don't know them and didn't feel comfortable to actually predict that. So the anticipated town share, as you can see, is 66.5 million. That's what the town would have to borrow, not the full 114, and the MSBA would not want them to borrow that full number. The reimbursement happens as the project is built, so the funding comes in real time to help limit the amount of borrowing the town does. With that, next slide. So what happens if, the question's been asked, what happens if Stoughton votes no on the project and doesn't pass it? Obviously, the state funding would not be available for this project without the town approval. That is a condition on the MSBA funding. As you know, both buildings, both the Wilkins and the South, but particularly the South, has significant deferred maintenance that would need to be attended to. From the point that on the South has been sort of paused in the last few years, given the upcoming project. The project would be, in order for the town to be eligible to come back into the MSBA process, we'd have to get into the queue for that funding, like any other project would, and discuss with the MSBA what a future project might look like. Construction costs are escalating in the meantime. They're escalating. We've carried a 5% average for our project. Obviously, if it goes on for years, most people feel that pace of escalation in construction is going to continue for the foreseeable future. We did do a scenario where we fully renovated the 2 schools, and the cost of that was the construction cost was about close to $70 million. So when you add in soft costs and phasing and all the things, it would be likely much more than what the project we're seeking approval for is here currently. And then there is still going to be a need to redistrict. There's going to be a need to find additional space for the enrollment increases. All that would have to happen very soon and cause cost to the district as it deals with modulars and what to do with these space constraints and the redistricting process much sooner than planned. So those are the sort of the implications of a no vote on this project. PJ?
So we're about to wrap up, but the MSBA regs, if you go through them and you have the patience to, they don't tell us to come back and propose a project. Actually, the way the MSBA regs put it is they talk about a solution. We identify the problem, it being the South School, and in this case, also the Wilkins School. And they ask us to study over a period of about a year through a feasibility study, a solution that comports with their regs, that follows their timeline and meets all their requirements for space, programming, etc. You heard Dr. Baeta went through and he talked about a solution that wasn't just focused on this school. It was focused broader. It was focused on the elementary schools generally. So we wouldn't have to put money into a new school, the Wilkins. right after we finish a South School project. It also decreases overcrowding in all the schools district-wide. You heard Carl Franceschi talk about this project as maximizing both the reimbursable space, because not all space in the school that we build will be reimbursable. This one maximizes all the reimbursable space. It also, it's the most efficient project on a number of levels, not just with the building. For the building committee's standpoint, we always looked at this from the very beginning as a school that we can't just build for, in this case, 550 students for 6 months of the year. It had to mean more for the community. It had to be something that gives someone without kids in the school who would be paying for the school some reason to vote for it, because it was a community amenity and not just a school for that limited number of students for a portion of the year. So yes, we'll improve education for all the elementary schools townwide. The teachers will have better facilities in this school that will cover 550 students and up to 600 students. And it will put our elementary schools, the facilities, in a good place for the foreseeable future. So we won't have to address another elementary school project anytime soon. It also represents community space for the town generally. If you think of the town and the recreational space we have, everything is sort of focused on the northern and western part of the town. There's very little on the south of the square. There's Halloran Park. That's about as far as you have for recreational park space. You, of course, have the golf course, but there are thousands of residents in this portion of town, and this would be an important community center. It's also a place where the town has invested quite a bit of planning, thought, and money also. There was a sewer project going down Park Street so that we could open up new opportunities for commercial activity. There's been traffic studies on how to improve the geometry of certain intersections that we all know are problems. And this project fits into that because it plays into what the town has done over the last half a dozen years, investing in the only portion of town that really, I think, has been, I don't want to say overlooked, but everything else is sort of focused on the other side of town. This project focuses on improving the southerly part of town, and I think in a good way. It also creates a long-term value for the town of Stoughton. I don't want to get nerdy in the numbers. If you look, the values in the town of Stoughton have increased over the time that we've been investing in long-term projects like this, the high school, the sewer project, now the fire station. If you look at property values, those have all gone up. The cost per taxpayer as a percentage of income and the cost as a percentage of people's property values have all gone down. Tax rates have also gone down pretty significantly over the last 5 years. I think that's a tax policy choice that policymakers have made. And I think the town has benefit if you look at the data. We're making more money on our real estate. People are keeping more of it. This is a cost. I'm not minimizing that, but I'm saying when you invest in town capital projects like this, all of the benefit is shared townwide in the form of property values. And I don't think you can minimize that because it's real value. It's people pay for retirements with the equity in their homes. They send kids to college. They use it for recreation purposes, their own vacations, vacation homes, all sorts of things that improving our property values depend on. This plays into that. It's also, I think doing a project like this, when you look at it, I really can't stress this enough because you don't see it in a two-dimensional picture. I'm really proud of this building. It's a beautiful building that I can envision more than most. And, I'm grateful for the people that we hired to put it together. Hard for me to get that across because I think I've heard people criticize it for its elaborate design. It's actually right in line with the cost of construction for all other K-5 elementary schools going on right now. It's just costs are high to build schools. And that's a shame, but it's not going to get any better. This is the time to do it for, if nothing else, that reason. And when you see it, much like I do when I drive by the high school, doing a project, accomplishing it, stepping back and looking at it, and using it for the recreational space, for the gym that's oversized so that it can accommodate Stoyak and JV basketball and things like that. It lends itself to a certain pride in the community I think is important. And it also allows for us to grow generally, both in this area of town and the schools. If we don't have to focus on another elementary school, we can focus on other projects in the schools and elsewhere. Police station, other projects in town, and of course, a middle school eventually. I think that's in the longer term future. I don't want to speak for the school committee, but there's at least an identified plan sometime in the future to address that. We can't do that unless we take some of these, I think, easier to manage projects off the table. And that's why this is a consolidated school. It allows us to address other town priorities. Thank you for everybody who showed up today. We tried to be quick about this so you could do it in this limited period of time. Could you flip to the last slide so I can make sure that I'm not missing anything? Tim mentioned the tax calculator, but the next important date for this project is, of course, the debt exclusion vote on June 11th. And I think there is also absentee ballot voting going on right now if you're not going to be in town. But at this point, we welcome any questions. The point of this school committee, of this meeting, is to invite questions, something we've done throughout. Most of this building design is the result of asking questions of the public and incorporating them. And I don't think that will stop until there's a school standing. For now, we welcome any questions you have, and thank you for coming.
Jeff, would you moderate? We do have 2 questions on Q&A.
Yes, the first question is asking how can we help? So I
can address that, Jeff.
Sure.
Is that the full question? How can we help?
Yes.
So the building committee we can't get involved in the debt exclusion vote advocacy. We're an apolitical group. We're a town board. We use town resources, town money. And everybody on the building committee is limited in what they can do for political action. Individually, we can, but there is a political action committee that has been established. And I think if you go on social media, you'll see them very active. There are people who are on the school committee, I'm sure, can direct you. I don't want to give out any information. That's not the building committee's role, but there is a group that right now is activating, and I think you'll hear more about them in the very near future.
The next question is actually about the Hanson School playground, which I believe was mentioned when we were talking about upgrades at some of our other elementary schools. So if we could just have an update on that project.
So thank you for the question. It's a great question. There has been a delay from the approval of last year to this year. It was approved at town meeting in 23. We are waiting on the design phase of this. We have been waiting for quite a while. We have put forward a request with a timeline of this past Friday that we needed to have something in hand. We have not received that or a communication back, so I think we're going to be moving into a different company to help us so that we can start to break ground on that playground. So it's not 2 years behind, but it's very close to a year behind schedule.
This is it right now for questions, but this is a good opportunity to ask.
Someone's raised their hand, Jeff.
Yes. If you could enter, there's a Q&A section. If you could enter your question into the Q&A section, we will be happy to address any questions that come in. It's a good opportunity to remind everybody that if you're watching this live on May 21st, we are having an in-person forum at the South Elementary School at 6:30 today, Tuesday, May 21st. That's at 171 Ash Street. And while this presentation will largely be the same, it's a good opportunity if you would like to see firsthand what the South School looks like in its current conditions and its current state. There'll be tours after the presentation tonight. And again, that's at 6:30 if you're watching live.
Jeff, if I can also add, if something comes to you after this presentation, you look down in the left-hand corner, there's an email address, newelementaryschool@stoughtonschools.org. You can email the question there. Someone will get you a prompt answer. Also on Facebook, I know there's a project Facebook page, and I think there's a link also on the project website on the stoughtonschools.org website. That should be pretty easy to find. There should be a question portal in there that you can certainly submit a question after this, and you'll get a quick answer. I can almost guarantee it.
And we do have a comment about tax exemptions for those who qualify. So would anybody be able to speak on some of those options?
Sure, I can do that also. I feel like I'm talking too much. So we did this on the high school pretty robustly, and we're doing it again. Started doing it in an email discussion with the project team. But we put out a single page info sheet on all of the tax relief programs that are available to seniors, veterans, disabled individuals, and I think on the high school, we even held a seminar at the senior center for people who wanted to run through them in person. And we'll do that again. That's already in the works, should be coming out fairly soon. Look for it. There is available tax relief for seniors, particularly those both of need and those who just reach age of seniority, if I can put it that way. So look for that, and that will be out shortly.
And we have a couple of other questions. This is asking if we have a graph that shows how much we would pay for renovations versus constructing a new building, which is what we're proposing.
So maybe
I could speak to that.
Okay, Carl, you want to speak to that? Yeah.
Briefly, Jeff, we don't have a graph necessarily, but there's certainly backup information, again, available on the website. It's under the heading of base repair, which is a label that the state asks us to look into, which makes good sense because it gives us a baseline of what would it cost to fix the deficiencies in the existing building, to fix what's broken, to bring things up to current standards, not to change the educational environment, not to expand the building for more space, but just to repair what's there. And when we went through that during the feasibility phase, the total construction cost came to north of $30 million for those items. And that's just the construction cost. But to be honest, it's not truly a project with the amount of detail that this proposed new school has, because we didn't get into the exact details of when would this happen, what would we do with the children in the school at the time. We did make an allowance for some in the cost of some modular classrooms to be able to empty out some of the building. But if that truly came to pass, it would take another vote of the town to appropriate a cost of that magnitude. So there would be more detail needed to really project when would it happen, how would it happen. But it's north of $30 million. And then, if the building needed to expand to, take on additional enrollment, that's another step above and beyond that. So that would, be the way to think about this, that just the base repair of the existing school, which, serves only some 300 students, not 500 students, 550 students, is north of $30 million.
We
That
have
would be without touching the Wilkins.
I'm sorry?
That would be without touching the Wilkins school.
That's correct there. Great. The Wilkins is a separate project, and That building has more recent improvements, though, in terms of the windows and some of the accessibility issues and so forth. It's not quite as needy, and it is intended to stay online and become a preschool center for the town.
We have 3 more questions in the queue at this point. Actually, we have a few more, maybe 4 or 5. The next one up is, what will happen to the students that go to the South School right now?
Just the school the location of the new school is not on the location of the south, so they'll just remain at south during construction, if that's what the question is referring to, and move over to the new school when it's ready in 2027. That's the plan.
It may
And-
also be inquiring, Tim, if we were to do renovation, if the vote should fail and the school needs to be renovated or repaired, what would happen to the kids that go to school there now? As we said, it would require a significant number of modular classrooms to be able to empty out a portion of the building, if not the entire building, in order to do some of the renovations needed there. Because it all can't get done during the summer. Some of it will inevitably be undertaken during the school
And
year.
largely take a lot longer, obviously, because we would have to do it in chunks.
Yes, yes.
The next question is, how long will the tax increase last? Will it remain regardless of school construction budget cost?
The tax for this kind of a debt exclusion override is for the length of the bond issuance. So that's obviously going to be decided when the town borrows. I'm thinking that's what the question refers to. So unlike an operational override, which stays on permanently, a capital debt exclusion like this expires at the conclusion of the debt of the term of the debt.
And that term is up to the selectmen, not the building
Yes,
committee.
yeah.
So the next question is, it's great you are adding additional educational opportunities to this new school. Will that be available at the others, STEM, sports, etc.?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is a great question, one that's come up a number of times, and then internally we are already beginning to work on. So by alleviating some of our enrollment issues in all of our schools, what we will begin to do is make sure that the experience at the Hanson, the Gibbons, and the Daw would also include a STEM classroom space. And we would have that availability to be able to do that in some of the other arts that we already do at the South, i.e. the theater, that some of the other schools don't do. So we want to make sure that regardless of where you are in town, that our curriculum experience is provided equally, because all of our kids come, if you will, into the same middle school and in the same high school. So it'll be different, but the idea is that things like STEM, we would be creating the curriculum and the spaces within the 3 other elementary schools for K to 5.
Next question is, does the $66 million taxpayer cost of the new school include the cost of the grounds work? It was suggested that it doesn't by no voters, but this commenter was under the impression that it did. So
Yes, it does include all of what Carl reviewed in the site plan, with all the well, not the site that supports the school, but also the amenities that you saw there and the access roads and parking, etc. All is included. So it's a completely all-inclusive cost. Furniture, equipment, site, obviously the building, and the soft costs that are required to build it.
excellent.
Can I add to that briefly? Because I was kind of startled by this when we worked on the high school. Everything down to the soup spoons that they ladle out lunch with. It's all inclusive.
Yeah.
And that's an MSBA requirement,
Including the moving costs.
including the movie costs, right?
So we don't have any other questions in the queue at this point. So last call, if you'd like to ask a question during this forum. But of course, the screen that's up right now has ways that you could reach out to us after the forum.
And there is the session this evening for those who are watching this live. If your friends weren't able to make this meeting, we'll be at the South School this evening at 6, is it? Or
6:30.
6:30, Jeff, thanks.
All right, so
Okay.
we do have one more question. Is the MSBA guaranteed? The MSBA portion of the funding, the grant from the MSBA, is that guaranteed?
The MSBA money is guaranteed. Unlike the older program from 20 or 30 years ago, where the application occurred afterwards, the new program has paid every single commitment it's made on every project, and it is guaranteed. It's actually pre-funded. The money is dedicated to the project once the project passes and moves forward. So there is no chance the money is not going to happen from the MSBA. That just isn't structurally possible the way the program is set up.
I just wanted to add, Tim, to the group, 15 years in this role and a number of MSBA projects, not only to support your statement that it's the funding comes through. I'd also just like to publicly note that during the height of the COVID situation, when the project costs were taken for a loop, that MSBA stepped up with a number of communities to make sure that they were able to still build what they were intending to build. So it's not just a guarantee. It's 15 years of this, 5 different building situations for me. Every penny from the MSBA has come through every time.
Yeah, and I would also add to just a little further to Dr. Baeta that we did have a one-time major adjustment to the reimbursement that has really helped with the cost quite a bit. And the MSBA has been pretty clear that they're not going to be doing that kind of a one-time adjustment or keep pace with inflation with construction. So the gap between reimbursement and cost is likely to expand in the future if this doesn't pass. That's something we didn't mention in the presentation.
And can you address the possibility of going over budget?
Yeah, I certainly can. I mean, we've not, I mean, first of all, the budget has contingencies, appropriate contingencies for escalation, for design development when things come up that we haven't fully expected, for change orders that come up. So the budget is not robust, but it certainly is. It's been designed to be sufficient to take up all the costs plus normal contingencies. We've, in our experience, and obviously at the high school, this was replicated with our work on the high school with DRA. We have not had projects come in over budget. They don't. So there are a lot of tools that we use through the course of the process to make sure that doesn't happen. If there looks like there's a chance, for instance, as was mentioned, COVID created some major inflation spikes in the supply chain that we had to accommodate, and we did within our means and within the intent of the project. So we don't have projects that come over budget. That has not happened, and the program we're pretty much under. Aside from being good practice, we pretty much no longer, the MSBA makes sure that the projects are adequately funded for contingency.
Can I add to that quickly, Tim? So the building committee has also already, one of the tools that I think Tim has in mind is that we already voted as a building committee to pursue this project under a program called Construction Management at Risk, in which we will sign a contract with a construction manager for a guaranteed maximum cost. Doesn't mean there can't be extras along the way, but the construction manager and the town enter into a contract for a guaranteed maximum cost. And one of the reasons for that program is cost certainty. I'll also add that we had gives me an opportunity to just very briefly, couple seconds. talk about what we did with the CM at Risk program for the high school. CM at Risk actually reached out into the community. They held a job fair for local residents. They had some sort of STEM education programming with the construction team on site. They did all sorts of wonderful things for the community. I know that has nothing to do with cost, but while it's on my mind, it has to, it ties into what I said earlier, is that we looked at this project as a solution for more than just one building at one time.
And then we have a question about what happens to the current South School property? Can it be sold to fund this and or other projects such as the new middle school?
I think I can handle part of this. Joe, talk to my aide if you can correct me if I miss anything. But so once the schools decide that the building and property are no longer used for school purposes, that's from the statute, the property reverts back to town control and the select board, and they decide what policy decisions they want to employ with respect to that property. So once it's no longer going to be used as a school and the school committee votes on that, it shifts over to the town side to decide that next question. The building committee doesn't get involved in that particular issue, though. Well, looks like we've exhausted our questions, and I don't want to keep anybody beyond the limited time that we set aside for this afternoon. Give a couple more seconds if anybody wants to sneak a question under the wire. Seeing none, and allowing for some typing, I'll just restate that there is a on the Stoughton Schools website, there is a portal to ask questions. On the project website, on social media, there is a Facebook page for the project where you can submit questions. And there's an email address, I believe it's newelementaryschool@stoughtonschools.org. You're welcome to email a question and you'll get an answer right back. Thank everybody for attending today. We are having another in-person forum just like this at 6:30 this evening at the South School. If anybody would like to attend, you're welcome to come with any more questions and hear more of the presentation in person. Thank you all again.